So would you mind please starting with a brief introduction? So that can just be your name, but feel free to add your age, profession, and where you're from.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Layba. I'm 20. I'm Pakistani. I work as a community organizer at the Auckland Women's Centre. I'm a final year law student, so I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I'm also a part of Dear M, which is Help Auckland's ambassador program, and I've been a part of it for around 5 years now.
One of the mainstays. And what do you know about Help Auckland, and how did you come to hear of us?
Yep, so Help Auckland, I was introduced to it in year 10 of high school. I received counselling for it through my school. A help counsellor came to our school twice a week, and I saw a counsellor through Help for 2 to 3 years. And it was actually that counsellor that introduced me to Dear M, so kind of stuck through with it since then, yeah.
And can you tell us a little bit about why you ended up engaging with Help's counselling services? What happened in terms of any sexual abuse, but just whatever you feel comfortable to share.
So the way it kind of happened, I went through childhood sexual abuse with another family member, a cousin of mine, and I didn't really understand what it was until I moved back to New Zealand, started high school, and I remember very vividly it was Consent Awareness Week at school, and I saw one of those posters that list out activities and behaviours that are harmful sexual behaviours, and I saw it and I went, oh, that reminds me of something, because I kind of had those memories buried off in my brain, or just thought it was normal because it happened across a few nights, and so maybe I thought I was dreaming, or I don't know, I didn't really pay too much attention to it. I think my brain kind of just tried to protect me as long as it could. And so saw that poster. I went to one of the counselors in school, and I said, hey, I think this happened. And from there I did 1 year of counselling with her, and then after that I started seeing a counsellor from Help Auckland who would come into our school and do counselling with us. So, yeah.
And so how old were you at the time that you were sexually abused?
Around 11. It was near my birthday, so it has always left a bit of a weird reminder, and it was really difficult for me to come to terms with what had happened, and I'm glad that I sought counselling. It's really difficult to go on your own and kind of just be like, hey, so I think this happened to me, especially because of sexual assault. Your memories often get so fuzzy and mixed up and muddled up, because again, my brain just tried to block out as much as it could. And something that I wasn't prepared for was that the more I went to counselling, the more I guess I uncovered those memories, the more painful it would become. But I was grateful that I had counsellors from Help, and then also the DM group, who've been such a rock for me, and I legit wouldn't be where I am without Dear M. So having that community was really important for me, especially because I couldn't talk about it with my family or my relatives, or my parents. So yeah, it started at a very young age, but yeah, the impacts of it. I'd like to say that I've completely healed from it, but I don't think I have. It's still quite difficult for me to talk about that particular set of sexual assaults that happened as a child. I talk often about the relationship abuse I went through. A lot of my advocacy is drawn from those experiences, but something that I've been thinking a lot is why I don't talk about my childhood sexual abuse. And I think part of the reason why I'm here and why I've chosen to do it here is because it started with Help. My journey with kind of going through that, unpacking that trauma, started with Help, and it just kind of felt right to start talking about it publicly with Help.
And I think counselling is such a important part of the personal healing process. and also the work that you're doing with DRM, but we'll get onto that soon in terms of advocacy and social change. But were there any other avenues that were available to you, like justice or restorative justice services?
Not for the childhood sexual abuse I went through, because he's still in Pakistan, so that wasn't really an option. I tried to go through the courts for the sexual abuse that happened with an ex-partner. Wasn't really successful. I went all the way through to giving evidence, and then I remember I was talking to the social worker assigned to me because I was 17 at the time, and I didn't have family supporting me through it, and I just asked her deadpan. I was like, what are my odds? And she was honest. She said that this was a very he said, she said situation. I was in a relationship with the person, and so he had grounds to argue that I consented. And I was a first year law student at the time, and so the way my brain works and the way I was like, okay, what is something I can do about this? Let me go read our laws and yada yada yada. Didn't end up pursuing that court case because I came to the conclusion that our laws are a little bit outdated and messed up when it comes to victims and survivors of assault. So didn't end up pursuing any other forms of restorative justice or the courts because it just wasn't worth it for me anymore. Yeah.
That's a very common story in terms of the court system, but I'm glad that you found other avenues to heal and to make change. So you've talked about how you experienced childhood sexual abuse and then again in your teen years. So how did that all leave you feeling?
Oof. It's almost like both instances of assaults have left me feeling different ways. When it happened as a teenager, I was angry and I was upset, more so that I had been so betrayed by someone that I loved and trusted. And so there was a lot of anger, and I think that came with being a teenager in that territory and all the joys of being 15. There was also a sense of betrayal due to the fact that he knew what had happened to me as a child. And even though it wasn't the same circumstances that led to rape, it was still rape. And I think that's something that wasn't really common knowledge, I guess. I feel like there's a very textbook definition of rape sometimes, which is stranger in the bushes, or someone in the dark at night. But what we do know now is that it's most likely someone that you know and are in regular contact with. So there's a lot of betrayal, a lot of hurt, a lot of anger when I was a teenager. But when I think about my childhood sexual abuse, there's a lot of shame, a lot of deep hurt and shame, because whenever I go back home and I visit family, or I'm around that family, or I'm around him, I instantly feel like I'm 10, 11 years old again. I like to think that I'm quite accomplished and I've done good things with my advocacy and my career, but it is such a surreal experience to go in front of someone who's caused you so much trauma and pain, and they don't even recognize that. And it just makes you feel like everything you've done doesn't matter, because in that moment you're back to square one. And I actually last time when I went home a year ago, I confronted him and I said, you did this and this to me, like, do you know what you did was wrong? And then he just kind of flipped it on me, saying that, yeah, I guess we didn't have consent education, but also you did XYZ behaviors to make me do what I did. And that just kind of made me feel like I was back to square one with my healing and with the progress that I had made, which wasn't true. It isn't true, because there's nothing that can take my healing away from me, but it felt like that in that moment. because because I'm in a different space, physically, literally, mentally, and it's hard to forget the support that you have when you're in another country and you're away from the people that you love. So whenever I think about my childhood sexual abuse, I always feel very vulnerable and afraid and almost like a child, because again of the age that I was when it happened, and also because memories of those nights are still coming back to me. And it was a very different experience processing that versus processing what happened to me as a teenager, because I could channel anger into that, but I couldn't channel anger into what happened to me as a child, because he was only a few years older than me as well. So I wanted to give him benefit of the doubt of, we were both young kids and, didn't have consent, education or sex ed or whatever it is. But then I had that conversation with him, and he stood his ground. And I think I just had to come to terms with the fact that even if he admits what he did was wrong, regardless of if he does or he doesn't, that's not going to change my experience. And I just needed to find healing in my own ways. And I think I've managed to do that somewhat, but it's a process. Yeah.
I just want to empathize, because if I think of the timings that you've put to me, it's like you would have just been going to counselling and processing your childhood sexual abuse, then when you were betrayed by your partner at the time. It must have been really, really difficult, so just wanted to acknowledge that, and also to say how proud I am for everything that you've achieved to make changes so that it doesn't happen to others. So at the time, did you think it was okay to seek help?
Both times, I'll be honest, no. The first time, didn't even know it was a thing, didn't even know what sex was. I think I got my first period a few weeks after it happened. So I remember my mum saying that I had gotten my period really early, and like no one else usually gets, in our family would have gotten it at that age. Like usually it's a bit later down the line, and for some reason that always kind of stuck with me. And so didn't really know what sex was or what. I was so freaked out about my period, I thought I was dying. So that kind of puts things into perspective. When it happened as a teenager, I'll be so honest, I didn't think that it could happen to me again, or that, of course, like I was in so many community groups and I was doing advocacy and was a part of DM, and I knew what rape was and I knew what sexual assault was, but I didn't think it could happen to me. And I don't know why that is. Maybe I just thought that, I've been through it before, why would it happen to me again? But also, why would someone that I trust and love, who knows what I've been through, do it to me? So it wasn't that I didn't think it was okay to seek help. I think it was more so I didn't think I needed help, because I was already going to counseling for my first instance, and it took me a long time to even come to terms with what was happening with my relationship as a teenager. And by the time I did seek help eventually, but it was really difficult for me to almost swallow my pride that I had let this happen to me again, because I took a lot of the burden on myself, because it was a very emotionally manipulative relationship. And again, it wasn't textbook rape, it was coercion, and it was pushing me to do things I didn't want to do. And it's a bit difficult to explain that when you're not even supposed to be in a relationship. I'm not supposed to be in a relationship. So it's hard admitting that it's happened again. And I wish I could say that was the last time it happened, but it wasn't. And so there was one other instance that happened quite recently. Again, right before my birthday, I was it happened in a place that I was supposed to feel quite safe, and it was with someone that I trusted quite a lot. I would talk quite openly about things like, oh, I'm choosing to wait for marriage, or I'm not really interested in having a sexual relationship with anyone at this stage, because I'm not. And then he knew about this, and he still did what he did, and it happened in the morning, and then I had a 3-hour long meeting afterwards, and I'm just sitting there, and I go, I should probably take a plan B. And one of my colleagues who was also a student with me, she just kind of looks at me, she goes, why? Because, like, generally all my friends and people who know me closely know that I don't have sex. And so they were just, like, confused. But she didn't push me. She was like, she probably just thought that I had sex, and that was fine. She's like, oh yeah, you can go get a plan B because it's free at our uni. I grab a plan B, I go back to the student lounge, and some of my other really close friends are sitting there, and they're like, why are you taking a plan B? And I'm like, this happened. It's kind of funny, but like, this happened. And they're just like staring at me in shock. And they're like, Layba. And I'm like, what? Like, I'm legit like, what? Like, it's funny, haha. Awkward. And they just stare at me deadpan. They're like, are you okay? Like, and I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. Like, I'm not a victim. Why would something like this happen to me so far into my career, where my platform is built on sexual violence prevention? Men joke that they're afraid to be in a room with me, and I like it that way. And then coming to terms with that has been really difficult. Taking a plan B was weird. And then the timing of that was really awful, because at the same time there were elections happening at our uni for our student association, and I was rerunning for president. And somehow Reddit, lo and behold, found out what had happened, and then it was out there for the entire university to see that I had gone through something, yada yada yada. So I didn't really get the privilege of, well, everyone thought it was a rumor, but people kind of put two and two together as well, that it had actually happened. And I was having people message me like, oh, this happened, and I felt so hurt that I didn't even get the chance to process it on my own.
It was public,
It was so public, so quick. And being a part of my uni student association for 2 years, having been a part of it for 2 years already, I would have thought that, look, you can hate student politics, you can not agree with student associations, that's your prerogative, but we've done a lot for the students at our uni, and I think to have put in so many sleepless nights, to have worked sometimes 24 hours straight, and then to get, pardon my French, but get shit on by the entire student community anonymously, by a large amount of the student community anonymously on Reddit, online, is just a surreal experience. And again, my brain just kept repeating the phrase, like, why would this happen to me? It was almost like a, how dare you? Do you know who I am? Do you know the things I do? I've stood in parliament, and I've done speeches on sexual violence. I've met ministers, I've got a national campaign, I'm qualified, I'm this and I'm that. But then something like this happens, and I'm 10 years old again, I'm 11 years old again, and I'm just in shock. Because sex is something that was so important to me. It was the way I was raised, and I have no shame in that. Sex is something important to me. I want to do it with someone that I trust and that I love and that I want to be with. And to have that repeatedly taken away from me has felt like a slap in the face. And that's something that I wasn't really prepared for was how much that was going to impact my physical health as well. And so when I was going through seeing gynos and trying to get an answer for the source of my really, really painful periods, a lot of the times the physical exams were things I couldn't get through because of how much emotional anguish it would put me in. And that really complicated things, and it made me feel like, you know, I was damaged or I was broken because of the things that had happened to me. All of that to say, it's hard admitting something can happen to you more than once. And the fact that it happens one time in your lifetime is a lot. And I think for it to happen repeatedly, I don't know, it just feels like a slap in the face. You're like, okay, universe, you need to calm down. Like, I've received enough character development. I like to joke that all my trauma is character development, but I think I've received enough for a bit.
Have you received any support for the most recent?
No. So I haven't at all, because I'm still like
Processing it yourself.
still processing it.
Yeah.
Because it was very public facing, and then the year ended, and then I kind of just kept moving on to the next thing. Yeah, I haven't really talked about it with a lot of people. Not a lot of people know either that it actually happened. A lot of people suspect that it happened, but not a lot of people know, because it feels embarrassing. Which again, like you think rationally, and you're like, no, like I know this is my area, and you're not to blame, you're never to blame, it's not your fault, all these things that I have said so many times to other people, comforting them, supporting them. But when it happened to me most recently, in arguably the most textbook kind of way, it was just like, but like making excuses. And I had, before I even processed it, I had messaged him saying, hey, I don't know how I felt about what happened. I'm not really comfortable. I don't think we should be friends anymore. And then he said something like, okay, I'll pray for you. And that just kind of made me feel like,
So patronizing.
I was like, pray for me. Like, what did I do?
Yeah.
So I've been wanting to get back into counseling. I kind of forced myself to do that by like registering through ACC, just because I feel like I was going to keep delaying it. And I think one of the little perk, I guess, of the ACC wait time is that it gives me that period to process it before I'm ready to talk about it. Because yeah, at some point you just kind of go, like, it gets to a point where even statistically it shouldn't be happening this much. Because for some reason all my instances of sexual assault have been on the worst scale in terms of like severity and physical severity, which has been rape. Yeah.
I think my feedback, if I can like pass that not to you but to anyone, is like when I went through the ACC sensitive claims process, I found every single one that like connected with my, like I went through and I just copied all of their emails. BCC'd them. It was just like mass email, I think, to like 50 to try to find, because otherwise the wait times are so long. Like, but it's nice that you can just take that this time now and also just
breathe. Yeah. Breathing is good. Breathing is nice.
So how did HELP's therapy services support you in your journey to healing?
Therapy is underrated, and I say this to everyone that I meet and talk about my kind of healing journey, because the way my brain kind of works, I need answers. I need to know why I feel the way I feel and how am I going to stop feeling it. And so for me, in year 10, I had to start from the ground up. And it was, why has sexual assault affected me so much? Like, why is this affecting me? Why? I don't want this to control my life, my emotions, because I was dealing with really severe panic attacks and all throughout high school, and therapy was literally the only way that I got through it. And it was even like basic things like breathing techniques and how to ground yourself, and think about 5 things you can see and 4 things you can touch and all those kind of things. And so for me, I like to think of therapy giving me a little toolkit that I might not use it every day, because thankfully now I'm in a place where I'm not having panic attacks every day, or I'm not, I guess, quote unquote, triggered as easily. But on the days that I am, I can kind of go into that toolkit. Even though I learnt about it like 4 to 5 years ago, I have it ready and there if I need it. And so I think the best way to kind of describe it is therapy and counseling really just gave me a set of resources. And if nothing else, it validated how I was feeling. I don't think there was ever a time where I walked into a session and I said, I'm feeling like this and this, like, is this normal, is it not normal? And then I would always be told that, yeah, it's normal, it's okay, it's normal. I don't think I was ever told, nah, you're weird for that. Which I think, again, as a teenager is really comforting to hear, because not only was I processing sexual assault, I was also going through the average teenage experience of crushes and puberty and being a teenager. A teenager is awful. Oh my god, I would never want to relive my peak kind of teenage years. I'm only 20. I'm not old, but never going back to like 4 years ago.
You're 1 year out of your teenage years.
Yeah. Yeah. But to be fair, I have not felt like a teenager since it's been a hot minute.
So looking at other ways that people can seek support and improve their mental health after trauma, outside of therapy, how have your family, friends and community helped you during that process?
It's really difficult for me to rely on other people for support, if I'm being very honest. Family, I eventually told my family what had happened, and I won't go too much into how that went down, but it wasn't really to seek support, it was just to tell them what had happened, because it was with a family member, so I told them. My friends, I'm very grateful and privileged to have such a good network of tight friends that I've had for consistently for 4 to 5 years now, so I keep a good circle, and they've always been there for me. The way I often process things is sometimes I just need a rant, I need to cry, and then I'm like, okay. But it's something that I'm very aware of, is that I really hesitate asking for help. I hate asking my friends for help. I feel like a burden a lot, and just, again, been through it so many times, I just need to, it gets to a point, I need to stop going through this. But which is why for me what has really helped is writing. I do journaling, I write poetry, I write little just doodles. I used to have a lot of diaries as a kid, and so now I don't keep diaries, but I still write quite a bit, and that really helps me, and then kind of helps me get out of my own head, and then I can talk to a friend or a loved one about how I'm feeling. So yeah, I think journaling, writing reading has been a really good crutch for me, just in the interim where I don't feel like I can talk to my friends. Because for me, I think I'm scared of relying on people. which I'm trying to learn that it's okay to rely on people sometimes. But I think that's why doing a bit of journaling before I go talk to someone, one of my friends, kind of, I guess, reassures my brain that I'm not 100% relying on someone, that I'm still in my own autonomy and I'm still okay. And also, anxiety is really mean and just kind of tells you that everyone hates you and that none of your friends actually are friends with you and they don't like you. So, yeah.
Anxiety is the worst. And how, like, so you've spoken a bit about your family and friends and some activities that you've done to support your healing, but just wondering about how your wider community and, like, even thinking Dear M and everything like that has also contributed to support your healing.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of my healing has come out of my advocacy, and a lot of my advocacy has come out of my rants. So something that we say quite often when we're pitching Dear M is that your rants can literally turn into your projects. We've got a bit of a running joke as well, because, you know, a lot of authors say that they had a dream and then they wrote a book, or, you know, I have a dream. We often talk about having a rant, because a lot of our projects as a team come out of our rants. So I was ranting about how messed up the justice system was, and then Miriam, who used to be one of the facilitators at Dear M, was kind of like, okay, what do you want to do about it? And I was like, ooh, great question. And then kind of from there, largely with the support of HELP and Dear M, was I able to, you know, start a petition, go through that entire process of advocacy and campaigning and pushing for laws that are better for survivors and victims of sexual assault. So a lot of my advocacy, and it if nothing else, it's just a nice reminder that you're not alone in the way you're feeling. It can, I think, especially in today's political climate, it can feel quite isolating, and it's easy to lose hope. And so in these Dear M meetings where we're sitting and we're talking and we're like, oh my god, like, this sucks, and everyone goes like, yeah, that sucks, you just kind of go, okay, like, I'm not alone in this.
I think it kind of brings me to potentially merging the next two questions. So you've sort of touched on how through Dear M you've done some work to advocate for survivors of sexual abuse, like with consent law reform, but also you've done some stuff outside of Dear M, with your work with the Auckland Women's Centre, law studies. So just wondering, so what are some changes you'd like to see in this space, and how have you continued to advocate for survivors?
I think the way the New Zealand model generally works is that we focus a lot on being the ambulance at the bottom of the hill. My personal philosophy has always been, we need to stop people from reaching the bottom of the cliff in the first place. So a lot of my kind of passions lie in the prevention space rather than the response space. Not to say that, you know, our response systems also need to be better and we need to put more time into them, but I do believe that as a country we need to put more into our prevention and stopping it happening in the first place. So for me, when I think about prevention, automatically, you know, our laws need to be much more secure, much more victim and survivor centric. They need to be, we don't even have a definition of consent or a legal age for consent, which I know a lot of people think that we do, but we don't. There's no law that specifies what age you have to be after which you can give consent. Whereas, for example, it's very clear that you can only get your learners, or you're restricted after a certain age. And so it's things like that. But also thinking about my work over at the Auckland Women's Centre, where right now there's a bill that's been introduced to criminalise stalking. And it's just about making sure that, yes, there are bills that are coming through, but they also can't be the bare minimum, because right now what we have is the bare minimum, and it's not good enough. I think if the bill as is gets passed, we'd be really disappointed, because it's something that's going to be pushed to be changed again in like another decade or so. So I think, you see, there's people are angry and they're motivated and they want to do something, and there's so many things that all of us want to do, so it's a bit difficult to think of what you can always do. But for me, consent law reform will always be at the forefront. The minister finally got back to me after 4 months, the Minister for Sexual Violence, and has graciously given me 30 minutes of her time over Teams. So we'll see how that works.
When's that?
It's on the 20th of Feb in the morning, and then in the evening I'm getting an IUD. So, you know, it's gonna be a day.
Just to go out here trying to make positive changes in the space.
Yeah.
And so why do you think that free specialised support services for survivors of sexual abuse and their loved ones are so important?
I don't know where I'd be without it, honestly. Like, if I'm being, like, not to be too emo or anything, but I genuinely don't think I would have gotten through high school or be alive if I didn't have the support that I got from HELP and Dear M. And even after leaving high school, like, the amount of support that I've received purely because of HELP and Dear M, I have not received anywhere else out of any other part of my life. And I've done a lot of community work. I've been with a lot of organizations. There's something so unique about what HELP brings that I have yet to see anywhere else. And I think if those services, even by a fraction, were reduced or tried to be, cut off, or funding were to be lost for it, I think there would be so many people at a loss, myself included. And it's just such a beautiful thing that HELP does for so many people. And it's not in just one way. It's not just one service. It's not just, one specific thing that HELP or DM are providing. It's such a wide array, and it's individualized and unique to each person, which is why it works so beautifully in the way that it does. And I think to lose that would be a crime. And I owe a lot of my success to HELP and to Dear M, and I genuinely do not know where I would be if I didn't get the support that I did and that I am still receiving. Yeah.
Thank you. And so I guess just starting to wrap up the interview, do you feel like you're in a better place now than you were before?
100%. I do. I think I'm not where I'd like to be, but healing's not linear. And I think the fact that I can sit down and talk about the things that I have without absolutely breaking down into tears is saying something, because I cry about everything, like, all the time. So 100%, I'm in a much better place than I was before. And I'll hopefully be better up from here.
Yeah. And do you have any advice for anyone who has been sexually abused and needs help?
Ask for help. I think it's so difficult, like doing that initial phone call or that email or filling out that form, but it's so worth it. And I think it was the best decision that I could have made for myself. And you can do it at your own pace. Like, you can set up one meeting and then decide it wasn't for you, or take a break, or you can switch counselors, or you can try other services, but ask for help. Even if you think you don't need it, there is literally no harm that can come out of reaching out for support. And it doesn't have to be full-blown therapy sessions. It can be group activities, it can be arts and crafts sessions, it can be literally anything, because there's so many different services now available. Healing is not a one-size-fits-all. It's not a box. And so it's really good that we've got so many different services for that. So honestly, just ask for help, please.
And under the new ACC sensitive claims contract scope as well, now you can get like equine therapy, you can get like, you can see a dietitian, you can go to trauma-informed yoga sessions, like it's so much broader now than it ever has been before. So I definitely think now is such a fantastic time for people to reach out if they feel ready. Is there anything further that you'd like to add about your experience with help or about your own personal story?
No, I think I covered quite a lot, but yeah, I think just re-emphasizing what I said before about just how unique and special help is to me. If nothing else, it gives me hope, like genuinely. I come into our DM meeting sometimes and I don't even say anything and I'm just there and I'm so exhausted. But then I leave that room with hope, if nothing else. And I think that hope is in times like this where, you know, our political climate across the world is so confusing, and, you know, regardless of where you are on the political spectrum, I think it's a confusing time and it's a hard time for a lot of us, especially, you know, marginalized and vulnerable communities. So I think finding spaces that give you hope is really important, and I would hate to lose help. Like, I think it would break me. But yeah,
you're a very strong and incredible woman, and thank you so much for your time speaking with me.
Thank you.